Hi, I'm Milla and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video. This video is going to be a very special Q&A after 2 months since initially promising it to celebrate 1,000 subscribers, even though I'm now closing in on 1,200. But semantics aside, first off, please like and subscribe, comment, algorithm boosting stuff, we'll get out of the way now, and moving swiftly into the questions. So I put out a post on X, Twitter, fuck the new name X, and also my community tab. So I got some lovely questions from people about many different things, JRPGs, visual novels, and some Misc stuff. So I'm going to go through them all because I only got about 12, which is I think a lot for 1,000 subs. So I can afford to do them all instead of having to pick and choose. So I'm going to start with the gaming questions and then work my way down to the YouTube stuff, and then finally a couple of miscellaneous, not gaming related questions. So starting right away with Mad Kaiser's question. Yeah, a lot of these are going to be friends of the channel. I'm going to leave links to everyone in the description below if they've got a channel. Mad Kaiser asks, what is one JRPG that you would kindly recommend to anyone new to the genre? Someone that has never played a JRPG in their life before. So I had to think about this one, and I know a lot of the beginner-friendly RPGs I've still not quite played yet. So like, I haven't played Super Mario RPG, for example, or Magical Star Sign, which are 2 beginner-friendly RPGs. There's also Pokemon, which a lot of people recommend, and yep, I do not have, well, I don't have a mainline Pokemon game, so I've never played them. I do have the Europe and Japan exclusive typing spin-off though, which is something that is actually quite hard to find nowadays, and I only got it for like a tenner. So that's why I have it, and that's why I've not played Pokemon as well. I've just never been super into it, apart from the weird quirky stuff. So games I have played, I would start off with Chrono Trigger. That's aged very well. I would say play it with a guide though, because like a lot of JRPGs from the 90s and 2000s, it doesn't tell you what to do, you have to work it out yourself, which does raise somewhat of a barrier to entry, but because it's such a classic game, there's so many guides out there. Also, I thought about Sakura Wars Salon My Love, because that has a very America-centric setting, and I think it's really relatable for a lot of people in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas and even Europe as well, where they're going to be more familiar with this stuff, so that's some other reason. Issei, because the gameplay is really simple, it's on most modern platforms, it's easy to get into, and the story is fantastic as well. Gurimin, A Monstrous Adventure, this is a Falcon game that's kind of more like a platformer in some ways. It's very easy to get into. It's only like 5-10 hours long, so it's very accessible, and there's also, well, great characters too. And it's on PC, really cheap as well on sales. Final one I put down was Dragon Quest XI because, well, Dragon Quest is a classic. And if you really want to get straight into gaming history, well, like people like me, if you want to play an RPG, here's a historical game in the best possible, most accessible form. Next question comes from Magus, who asks, absolutely loved your Vanillaware history video, thank you very much. I feel like Vanillaware has successfully branched out into more genres with the success of 13 Sentinels and Unicorn Overlord. What do you think is next for them? Do you think they might return to a more action-oriented game? So I think there's probably 2 facets to this question. The first one is what have Vanillaware themselves said. So I touched on this in my video where George Kamitani was like, we've got a bunch of games you want to make, so we're going to make them. So I think that's where their priority is going to be for new projects. Some of them might be action-oriented games like Odin Sphere or Muramasa. They're definitely good at it. I'd like to see another modern one. And more on the topic of that, I do believe they're going to re-release more of their back catalogue on consoles at the very least, especially the Switch and the PS4 and the 5. And even Xbox as well, now Unicorn Overlord's on it. There's definitely a market for their stuff. In terms of newer projects that aren't that, I also think they will remake Princess Crown eventually. Like, that's not a Vanillaware game, it's a proto-Vanillaware game, but given that the 30th anniversary of the game's coming up in over the next 5-10 years, probably before then. Yeah, it's about that. I forgot the number off the top of my head. It's like 1995 something. It's either way, it's coming up soon. It would actually make a lot of sense to remake the game, especially because, as I touched on in that video, there is like next to no chance of the original release getting a localization at this point. So that makes a lot of sense. There's also the possibility of a Grim Grimoire sequel because Kamitani wanted to make that, and if the remaster but NIS produced a couple of years ago has sold well, I think there's a chance it'll actually happen, but I've heard nothing about that. But yeah, it's really good. And PC ports, I think they will eventually be forced to cave on that because like a lot of Japanese developers, they're probably still stuck in the 1990s and 2000s with regards to the PC. Like, it's not just porn games on PC anymore because Japanese developers aren't even making those because the market is shrinking. Next question comes from John at Chicken Fillets, who asks, Harvestella, discuss, smiley face emoji. Also looking forward to the Q&A. Thank you, John. So, Harvestella, I actually want to make a full video on this one at some point. So a lot of what I'd want to say to this would involve spoiling the story, because a story, it really goes places that you don't expect when you first start the game. And I think that's a really good thing. And I can't go into that, aside from going like the side quests are so much deeper than people think. At first glance, you've got these characters that you can grow attached to in their stories. It's so good. And you've got the gameplay, like, it's weird because this is a low budget game. There is some jank to the gameplay, like there's no dodge button, so it is quite different in that regard. It does add some extra challenge. The world is so immersive, the music's fantastic, it's one of Ghost Shina's best soundtracks. You've got the beautiful, like, the art as well. They made some portraits of all these characters, they're just so good. And it's like, oh, so hard to talk about it because I want to just go straight into spoilers. And I can see why people passed on it, because it was marketed as a farming sim when it's not really a farming sim, it's just part of the gameplay as an accompaniment, which you can skip, which is difficult, but you can skip it. And there's technically like a little roguelike elements as well with the dungeon down the well during Quietus, which there's just so much to talk about, and I just don't think there's any way that I will be able to do it justice in this Q&A. So let me know about when you want me to make a video on it, because I do want to make a video on it where I will just go, let's just fucking spoil everything. But yeah, I will say, I hope it becomes a franchise, because I believe this game deserves to become a franchise. Re-release a game, fix the flaws, even make a sequel. It's great, play it, and hopefully we'll get some merch for it as well, because I actually want a soundtrack CD, because it's amazing. Next question comes from Zoo at Flipping the Switch, who asks, what do you feel like the appeal of visual novels is over more interactive experiences? What's the strengths of the genre in your eyes? Yeah, there's actually quite a few visual novel questions, which has surprised me. This is the first one. So there's a few reasons why. First, the idea of like being able to combine gameplay with story and really produce a more story-centric experience. I think this is something that, when I think of this, it reminds me of a quote by Shigeru Miyamoto, which is along the lines of, when he talks to Western developers, they want to focus on stories rather than gameplay, whereas for Japanese developers, it's the other way around. I don't remember the exact quote, but that's roughly what it is. And I kind of think that really applies to visual novels, where because it's more story-centric than gameplay, if you really want to make stories, it can be, sometimes making it a full-on visual novel instead of a game is actually more effective. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, so things like JRPG visual novel hybrids or JRPGs that are so text-heavy, they like the end at times, like Persona and Trails. It can work, but really focusing on the story over the gameplay, your best medium is visual novels. And this is before touching on things like how visual novels are often such a niche medium that you can essentially release your product as a visual novel, and then if you like it, adapt it into an anime, into a manga. Because for better and for worse, the hardcore visual novel crowd, and this is across all genres, are very enthusiastic about supporting these products. So if they like it, the wide appeal is there. This is why you've got Fate Stay Night and Clannad animes are well known. Some even considered better than the visual novels. Those two are. And although some other adaptations are usually worse, such as Daisai Ray, it can be good for accessibility to start with visual novels. And you can get more of the story in the world as well. Then the final thing as well is on the English side, where visual novels are among the lowest barrier to entry genres for marginalized devs. So neurodivergent, queer, people of color, pretty much every other group under the sun, visual novels. That's why there's so many like romance games and other low budget visual novels made by marginalized devs, because it's accessible and it's not cheap, but compared to other genres, you can make it, and it's where representation is, which is, I believe it is part of the reason why ELVNs get a lot of shit from certain spaces, because they're more progressive and inclusive than other genres. And in many ways, they offer a very different experience from Japanese VNs as well. So I'm glad they're growing, because we need more diversity. and more inclusion. And that is something else that Visual Novels excels at, and it's gone right the way into other things like God of War, Tell Me Why, a bunch of other big budget stuff. Even the aforementioned Harvestella, here's the first Square Enix game with a gender neutral selection for pronouns, which is also really cool. So yeah, change starts from the bottom up, and far right gamers can get the next question. This is gonna be a massive one because it's all Otome. And yeah, I wish I had time to do more Otome when I balance everything else, because I want to do more. And here's a question that proves why. Demi asks, oh, do you have a top 3 Otome games list? If so, do you have favourite characters, allies, who are they and why? Also, any Otome localization wishes for the future, smiley faces. So thank you, Demi. So, I already touched on my top 3 in my recent Romance VN video. I don't really want to do a full Otome game video yet for my rankings because I feel like I've not played enough Otome, or I've played so much Otome that I really want to play some more non-Otome and other things, including indie VNs as well. I've played a couple, but not many. So I feel like I can do it justice because Otome games are awesome, I love them, but they're not just Otome, and once you've played enough Otome games, you'll want to play more from other developers in the meantime. So, and I say that despite having just done Norn last era and going to be getting the Q Pyrofen disc. So yeah, I guess I'm a hypocrite now. Anyway, my top 3, Q Parasite, Norn 9, and Nightshade. I mentioned those in the video. I want to do a full video once I've played more, so assuming I can get back to it, I'll probably not adding Black Wolf Saga to it as well because that's fantastic. As for favourite characters, starting off with Q Parasite, Lynette's awesome. Probably my favourite Otome game heroine. Very much a go-getter, very keen, just very, I just loved how proactive she is and just how very a strong-minded businesswoman. I thought it was so cool. And as for allies, so when I first finished Q Parasite, I lent more towards Gil the most, and Gil is the lovelorn parasite where he has a crush on Lynette and he just couldn't get over it. I think as time gone on though, I've kind of come to warm up to pretty much all the characters even more than I was when I first finished a game, and one of them was surprisingly Alan Melville, and Alan is the thieving parasite, and he has quite a wild character development and route, which I won't say anything about it here, other than it is different from the other routes in the game. So, kind of like the bad boy trope done right, and that's really hard for me to say about bad boy tropes. As for other games that come to mind, Verche, Protagonist was cool, but I think if I had to really pick, the highlight of that game was actually the love interests, especially Yves and Anko and Adolphe, who share the same route, which, yeah, if you know why, you know why, and that's one reason they're amazing characters. And there's probably a few more, but I want to really think on this a bit more before adding even more, especially non-Otome, but I'll just say I also like the guys in Nightshade as well. Anyway, moving on to the final part, which is Otome localizations, which, first off, I already did a video on this a while ago, which largely still stands today, but I'm going to go over a bunch of them here as well. I'll link to that video as well in the corner somewhere, but for the most part, I'm just going to quickly go through part of my list because there's more of it. So Clock Zero is a big one. That's one of the most popular Otome games that's not available in English. Nulad Mirari, Black Wolf Saga, which I think will eventually come to Switch because Otome are just porting everything from Rejet they've worked onto the Switch, and Rejet themselves have ported stuff. Kengakimi is actually one of the games they ported, and that has a fan translation, which I really hope gets finished. Shinigami to Shoujo, which is a Takuyo game, it's quite a niche developer. Utano Prince Sama, which I think we will get in the next couple of years because Chachian has done really well. I'm manifesting a double announcement for Uchronia, which is a new one that actually beats the big games for 1 week on top of the Japan sales chart. So nice win for Otome fans. I think that will get announced at the same time as Uta Pre. I'm actually confident because I feel that it would make perfect sense. Angelique, the whole series, Luminarize, Vitor. I picked Vitor in the video, but I would like to see Luminarize. I do own Luminarize actually, I want to play it if it doesn't get localized. And the rest are going to be older games, which I don't think stand a chance of coming over at all unless they get ported. Surin Digit, this is an interesting Vita title with the heroine was very different from the past games. I remember watching other content creators talk about it and being like, wow, this is actually really cool. There's Snowbound Land, which is a PSP title And it was the first title written by the writer for Code Realized and a bunch of other titles. I've forgotten his name. And then of course I put Toki Memo as well, which that's Konami's classic Otome game series. And although the whole series is now on Switch, I believe the chances of us getting that in English officially is practically zero, because Konami just do not give a shit about their niche IPs. I know people hope it happens, but it's just not going to happen. I'm confident it's not going to happen. And then finally, I want to mention this because after doing my Rui Party video from last year, which please go watch if you've not already, it's a fantastic video that I put a lot of work into. I really want to see the Haruka Toki no Nakade series, or Haruka, come to the West, especially Haruka 3, which did get an HD port for the Vita alongside a bunch of the other games, because the main protagonist is actually one of the most popular Otome game heroines, and well, they're basically RPG VN hybrids with really cool gameplay. And I actually, I loved making the Rui Party video because the gameplay that I was digging up was so good. And the history you can find behind this stuff as well is also quite fascinating. I am actually working on another Otome game retrospective video, which I'm aiming to release in June, which is about another well-known developer, which I've actually already mentioned in this video. And that one's going to be really interesting as well. Not just because of gameplay, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. In the meantime, subscribe so you can watch it. And while related to Rui Party, time to move on to the next question from Jay at Cold Nights Gaming, who I've been a podcast guest on his amazing Cold Takes podcast, by the way. Go watch it for opinions from so many great people. He asks, who is your favourite member of the Tokendanchi? I had to Google what the Tokendanchi was, so I should probably tell you exactly what my answer is going to be. And now, I don't actually know, because I've not played Token Rambu, which is what the Tokendanchi is actually from. And this was actually something I mentioned in a Rui Party video because Rui Party helped Omega Force co-develop the Token Rambu Warriors spin-off, which came out for Switch and PC a couple of years ago. It's apparently quite shite. I've not played it yet. In Europe, we only got a digital release, so I've not been able to import a copy yet. I don't know when I will, but I do want to play it. And it's also going to be the only way I'll be able to experience Token Rambu in English, because the game itself, which was previously a Joran exclusive in English and Chinese, is now no longer available. The service for it shut down within the last couple of months before I released that Rui Party video. So yeah, if you wanted to play that, you're shafted. And Shirivune, well, not Shirivune, because not Shirivune, they work on other stuff, they have their stuff on Joran, but they're not directly involved with the free games like Token Rambu. They do premium stuff. But Joran, who worked on that, they just shut it down unceremoniously with a tweet on Twitter. They got a lot of shit for doing that, and they deserved it. And yeah, don't shut your shit down like that, guys. The game's still going in Japan, on the Japanese servers, but I'm probably not going to play it. I've just never been super into it. But there are some Josamuke stuff coming out in the West in English I'd plan to check out, like Aichu. I know one of my friends who has played that game for years during the mobile era, absolutely loves that game, so I'll probably be checking that one out. Moving on to the next question from Not a Fan of the Rich Either, Not a Fan of Cops. Great name, by the way. Favourite non-VN games? Yeah, this is like the last VN question. So I'm going to broaden this out away from VNs and also JRPGs, just to add a bit more variety for the video. So some of my favourites include Mario Galaxy games, or by extension pretty much all the 3D Marios as well, but definitely the Galaxy ones, and Odyssey 2. Mario Kart, like Mario Kart Wii as well, Mario Kart 8. I have a hacked Wii with custom tracks on it. I did a video last year where I talked about it, which is not really the kind of content I'll make on the channel anymore, but you can go watch it, I'll link it. And I also had it for gameplay when I was talking about 3DS prices. So you fancied seeing I think it was in it where I had the custom model, which was basically Metal Face, which was kind of weird, but mods. Nintendo, you don't like them, but cope, people are going to do them. Rayman Legends, which the most recent console Rayman game is fucking amazing. Portal 2, Valve game, their last actual proper premium game that wasn't just an add-on for like Aperture Desktop and that kind of thing that's fairly, let's just have it for a device and that's it. It's an actual fully fledged experience. Animal Crossing, New Horizons specifically, not the others, and a few others like Celeste and Grizz, which I've talked about them before. Last question for this gaming section from Emily at Orbology, a massive channel. great channel, talk about curated collecting and that. She asks, if you could create your very own dream video game, what would the genre and general story stroke theme be about? I was actually thinking about this before I saw this question, and I think what I would probably end up making would be something that's more serious and romantic oriented, like a visual novel. I don't want to say similar to White Album because that's kind of like you're trying to imitate something, but something that kind of incorporates the more serious romantic themes that can be quite dramatic and is really heavily focused on the characters and some of the legitimate challenges that society pushes down on couples. And White Album 2 especially touches on heteronormativity, which, well, it is an adultery game. And if I go into it anymore, it's going to start spoiling, so I won't. But let's just say something that can leave an impact like that and really make people think. And even things that have subtle queer themes, that'd be cool. And also neurodivergent stuff because, again, as I said earlier, ELVNs need the rep. And I said earlier about the visual novels and making story over gameplay, I just think it's probably best suited for me. But if I get the opportunity to maybe work on an RPG or something, then yeah, I'll do it. Because again, you can weave it in and you get stuff like trails. Moving on to my next questions for YouTube channel, starting with a question from Ron Esper. So he says, hi Milla, congrats on 1,000 subs. What games inspired your love of games in general? Who and or what made you decide to start creating content? So in terms of gaming, I guess I could really talk about this by talking about my gaming journey, which broadly started in the PS2 era with a lot of like licensed THQ titles. If you remember those, like the SpongeBob games, which some of them were actually really good, like the original Battle for Bikini Bottom, the SpongeBob movie game. And then there were also the Nicktoons crossovers, and yeah, I grew up a lot on Nickelodeon stuff, so having them in the games was really cool, and I think that's why family got them for me. So I played a lot of these games. I remember once spending whole days just stuck in Nicktoons Unite, which is the first one in Vlad's Castle, where if you've ever played that, there's a stage where you have to destroy electric pillars to progress, and I just couldn't work it out and spent like a whole day just foring and unforing the electric cubes. If I can find gameplay online, I might have it over here now so you kind of see what I'm referring to, but yeah, that was one of the weaker games, but they were good. And then over time, moved to the Wii, because obviously it was a Wii, with Mario Kart, Mario Galaxy, the Touch Generation series, so things like Wii Sports, Wii Music, and it kind of began to broaden out from there as I moved to the DS and the 3DS and things like Dragon Quest, then later Edge Odyssey, and other titles I played during that era as well. And then finding the Vita as well, Persona 4 Golden, and that kind of where my taste really began to start shaping to what they are today, from the Vita, when incorporating the 3DS and even the Wii U. Yeah, I had a Wii U when it was a thing. And it's all come together. We have the Switch, PC, PS4, whenever a game comes out, everyone's playing it. And that kind of sums it up today. As for who and or what made you decide to start creating content, making content, it kind of started as a self-care thing, partly due to the pandemic and partly because of other like extenuating factors, which stuff happens, you gotta do what you gotta do, and I did this, and that's why a lot of my earliest videos are, if I can say this, kind of crap. I'm allowed to say that it's my videos, but I also wanted my own self-care space, not only talk about, do that, but also develop my own identity and talk about games in my style, on my terms, in a space that I can control, because gaming communities are fucking toxic. Especially like single player stuff is a bit better. It's multiplayer where it's toxic, but even for single player stuff, for a lot of Japanese and niche stuff, so many of the most vocal spaces online have, well, at best, clueless people that parrot anti-HW rhetoric, at worst, outright fascists. So yeah, it's hard to feel safe in a lot of these websites and communities because people do that, especially on the more, especially visual novels as well. Like, it's not, I want to have a space where I could curate that, not have to worry about potential like dealing with that. I still will find people with these mindsets, but it's easier to kind of step away from it because it's my own space. And I can just hide their comments. And I got some lovely comments to hide on my other video, which, yeah, I'm going off track now, but I needed my space. Fuck toxic weebs, I made my own space. And as for what made me decide to start creating my own content, for retrospectives, I can give a concrete answer, and that was Bowl of Lentils with his Leaf video, which is like a 1 hour video on Leaf, which is the adult brand for Aqua Plus. So yeah, one of the best videos on this website, and directly inspired me to start making some of my own. And they take a lot of time to make, especially when you are having to relearn a lot of the skills yourself. Which, yeah, go check out that video as well. I'll have that linked as well in a card or something. But I'll make some of my own, and I'd like to make an Aqua Plus video of my own because it is their 30th anniversary this year. I think I have an idea what to make, but obviously it's not going to be another history video because, again, it already exists. Go watch more Lentils video. But I'll have something because, again, one of the best developers ever. Moving on to the next question from Brandon, aka Just the Gems, who asks, if you had to do it all over, is there anything you would do differently in your journey as a YouTube creator? Well, first off, a little more research on things like how to make engaging videos and build a bit more of a brand, because it was kind of, at the start, it just was a bit disjointed in some ways, which kind of understandable if you're focusing on self-care and not to grow, if that makes sense, but I would have done that differently. And the other thing was, I used to have a podcast called, well, Milla's Gaming Podcast, and previously I'd alternate between that and then a video, but I don't want to do that because that kind of really slowed my growth for the channel because, well, people just didn't watch it, and even the videos blew up. I feel like had I been able to focus just on the videos, I would have learned a bit quicker what to do properly, and maybe now like make better stuff. And I do miss the podcast. I would like to revive it in some form, but I don't really want to do that until I'm a bit bigger, because people are more likely to watch it, but I'm going to cross that bridge when I get to it. Finally, a couple of more fun, non-gaming related questions. As SugarRushGames asks, what is your favourite non-gaming hobby? I was not sure how to answer this one, because I feel like I think my main other interest on gaming that kind of really comes close, but even then it still ties into so much other stuff. And also the question after this one is like climate and environmental justice. So for those who don't know, well, I imagine you should know, the climate crisis is a thing. It's the biggest issue facing my generation. I would say that is weird because I'm on the border between Gen Z and millennials, so I can sound both. So am I a hypocrite? Yes. Do I care? No. But I feel that's really shaped a lot of my interests, where I'm trying to be more sustainable. So it means my interests include like going out in nature, going for walks, traveling as well, trying to be sustainable, and, well, reduce the amount of waste. And an example is right behind me with the gaming shelves, which they're secondhand. Don't look secondhand. Other stuff is secondhand as well, like the TV down here is also secondhand. So it is possible, and I think I've also been thinking of starting to weave it into the channel for a while, which is why I did that video last month about why I'm not really buying many retro games anymore. I want to touch on some more topics again. I'm in the process of scripting a couple of things, so stay tuned for that. Last question comes from Cy Unicorn Overlord, or RecyclableCy, who asks, any dream places to travel? And I have a bunch, which probably would qualify as its own video, so I'm just going to limit it to a few. Interrail and flight-free travel in Europe more generally, because in Europe we're quite privileged to have a railway system that we can use to travel around easily. It's really cool. I did it last year, and despite the disaster that trip was, I still had a good time. I made a video about that one, which is now unlisted because it's crap, but it's there. Other ones, Australia and New Zealand, wildlife, natural stuff, huge different in climates as well. Other places are a bit more out there, so I talked a bit about, I'd like to go travel to the US and Canada at some point, because a lot of my online friends on YouTube are there, based in that region. Is where most of my audience is as well. If you're watching this, you're probably American, or you have an American accent. Other parts of Latin America, there's so many places I could list. And also there's a couple of other places in different parts of the world. So Mauritius is one, which is an island off the coast of Africa, in the Indian Ocean. And there's finally, I'd like to travel back to Japan, because I studied abroad in Japan many years ago, and I really want to go back and really fully explore without the stresses of studying at Japanese universities, which is a lot like secondary school. It was really weird. And that in itself warrants its own video. Yeah, it's a lot to talk about, and I'm kind of I've talked a lot, and I'm going to probably run out of video time on the camera soon, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in questions. I'm really happy to have gotten to around to finally doing this and share some of my thoughts and a few little teasers for future content as well. And please like, comment, subscribe, algorithm boosting stuff, everything else as well. It all helps build it. Consider becoming a channel member if you can afford to and want to do so. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.